did actually do our panel discussion in September on the education system. And I just have to plug it. CAN-TV has it's in their rotation right now. You can also order it from them. You can get a copy of it, and it's also on our YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/Becoming We the People, and it's on the flyers, the information on there, you can watch what we talk about. So the last question that I'm going to ask is, and we try to do this with all of our panel discussions, is what can people do that are not dedicated to this full time? How can you be a part of making reforms or being a part of the solution and things like that? So because we've kind of combined the topics and that everybody's been sort of discussing both, I'll give you the opportunity to answer either one. What can anyone do to get involved with improving the tax system or the justice system? So I'm going to start right here.
Thank you. Research is required, personal contact, exposure to what's going on currently, and as far as myself is concerned, I will be out there learning everything that I possibly can. And once this is done, I'll look for someone to share it with, and hopefully they'll share it with someone else, and eventually it'll go back to Ralph, and he will draft a proposal and send it in to wherever it needs to go. We do want to be active, and we want to be involved with the schools. Anything that will encourage the youth. I work with the youth in my community, and my community extends all over, everywhere in the Chicago area. I'm not limited, and I try to find out what's going on in the minds of youth, and I try to, so that we can address those needs, and that's what I will continue to do. I will work with the youth the rest of my life.
Wow, this is, I can do it for the criminal justice system. Communities have to stop calling police for everything. They have to stop keeping the pressure on the political officials to increase penalties. Every time there's a crime, we want the longest penalty. You have to stop that. There's this never-ending circle between the community, the police, and the media. Crime is plummeting in Chicago. Crime has plummeted since 1990. This is the safest Chicago has been since like the 50s. I doubt anyone feels that way, but it's true. But you're not living it, and you're not knowing it, and you're not feeling it, and the continuum of calling the police for everything, and making the police handle everything, and every time there's a squabble, it's always the police. The community has to at some point take responsibility and try to solve those problems inside their own community, know their neighbors, and handle it inside their own community. Because the less you rely on the police to solve the simple things, the less people get caught up in the system, the less they come out as ex-offenders and not have jobs, right? That system, something's feeding it. And communities have the responsibility to not put pressure on local officials to increase penalties and more cops in my neighborhood, because all the cops do is they arrest. So for communities, when you take that home, you have to live that, because you have a responsibility, right? When you make that phone call over nothing, or loud music, or a neighbor yelling at you, when you make that phone call, you're feeding the system. It's easy, we all do it, but we have to take some responsibility and stop that. And get to know our neighbors, so you can go over and ask them to lower the music, or whatever that is, right? And not call them for my kid not going to school. Believe it or not, Chicago police answer tens of thousands of calls. My kid won't go to school. My grandchild is disrespecting me. My grandchild stole $20. All of those types of squabbles that used to be handled in the home now are handled by the police. That's an increase. Something society's thrown upon them, right? We have to take that back. Reducing the involvement of the police department and the criminal justice system in our lives to the benefit of everyone, including the system, because then the police get to spend their time going after the really bad people. That few that are in our society, they can concentrate and go after them and stop them from raping again, or killing again, or molesting another kid. They don't have time to do that when they're trying to solve all of our personal problems. A couple gets in an argument, the police are called, instead of being able to solve it themselves. We have to find a way to do that and less reliant on the police.
I agree. We have to take our community back. we have to look at it from a village perspective. This is not just a black issue. This is a whole United States issue. It affects every level. You know, at the end of the day, it's a human rights issue. We can't keep throwing people in prison knowing that, you know, 95% of them are going to come back to our communities. So if that cycle keeps happening, crime is going to keep happening. In terms of encouraging people to get involved, I would say, you know, go mentor a child. Connect with a community organization that works on issues like this. Educate yourself. Read. You know, you can do a lot of research about the criminal justice system online, or, as I said, connecting with an organization similar to the ones that we work with. You could volunteer for the organization I work with. We work with ex-offenders, mainly adults, but we do work with some youth, mainly 18 and up. But I think that's the key, is mentorship, occupying our own communities, taking our communities back. And I agree that you cannot rely on the police for everything, because that just continues the cycle. When you stigmatize a young person by introducing them to the criminal justice system at such a young age for such frivolous type offenses, then that kind of, you know, scars them and creates a cycle where they just keep going that route versus being diverted from the justice system through programs, mentorship, and at the end of the day, economic opportunity.
What to do? That's a tough one. Again, it's tough to do these things in a short period of time. I don't think there's any substitute for being informed. And I don't think there's any better way to get informed than to actually listen and think about the arguments of people who you might disagree with. I'm probably a minority in this room. I'm a suburban-raised, free market, think tank working, unapologetic fan of capitalism, and critic of government, or big government. And I think when I need to go and find something out, I don't just go to some think tank website or my think tank and look at what we've put out. I actually go to Ralph's website, and I've advised Republican candidates at times, and I've said, you got to go to CBTA's website and read it. Well, that's a left-wing site. And I said, it's not necessarily a left-wing site. They have a certain perspective, and they put stuff out. And if you aren't aware of what they're putting out, and they have something on there that's right, then you're going to be caught blindsided by the information. And I would submit to you that there are some things that the free market movement and libertarians and conservatives have been saying for a long time that is not bad. It's not just some evil corporations trying to make the world safe for rich white people who live in skyscrapers. That's nonsense. I think that all of us should be a little bit more skeptical of the idea that government can solve our problems. I don't think it can. I think the government is there to provide a framework by which all of us have better opportunities. Does that mean we have a safety net? Absolutely it means we have a safety net. But the idea that we need a government commission to run our schools, a government commission to run our health care, a government commission to decide on where we go and what we do and where we can live and how our children are educated, I think for the most part it would behoove all of us, even if you don't agree with the general view that I'm espousing, to question the idea that we need the government to have 25, 30, 40, 50% of GDP. Are there reasons why that might be useful? Maybe. Are there places where it's worked better in some instances than others? I would submit that that probably is true, but there's also times the government has really messed everything up. And especially here in the United States, the biggest danger, and I would ask everybody to be wary of it, is the confluence of big government, big union, big NGO, and big business, all of whom are working together at this moment in time to take away as many of our individual choices and our individual ability to make choices as they possibly can, not only for corporate profit, but also for their own temporal political power that they get to exercise. I'm asking people, and I would say the same thing to an OWS, Occupy Wall Street person, as I would to any Tea Party group that I speak to. Walk into these issues with an open mind, look at the facts, look at the way things work, and look at how they might work best in the United States of America. And the solution is not always more money for the same bureaucracies that have been failing for the last 50, 60 years.
Yeah, well, first off, I'll answer your question, what you can do, and then I'll respond to Bruno. Right. So, what you can do. There's a couple of things you can do as an activist in your community. And meeting with your legislators in district with like-minded constituents to push your legislator or your alderperson, whomever, to take a specific position is very powerful. Have you ever heard the cockroach theory of voters and constituents? Every elected official has it. So we're all cockroaches. And if a couple of you show up in the office, that's a problem. But if like 6 or 7 of you show up at different times, that means there's another 100 or 200 of you scurrying about with similar ideas. So you could really influence your elected official if you keep coming back in district, meeting with him or her, and pushing. I think being involved with writing letters to the editor is a very powerful thing, especially for the local press. Certainly hosting things in your community, attending events like these, very important, and staying active in that. Volunteering in organizations that do work in your community, all ways to increase your personal power and knowledge, and of course research. So then that gets to us. I mean, Bruno likes to refer to our organization as liberal, which makes me laugh. My board of directors is bipartisan. In fact, we are the Bipartisan Center for Tax and Budget Accountability. And my chair of the board is a former Republican state rep named Bill O'Connor, who was, after he got districted out of his district by Madigan because he didn't like him so much, was chief of staff for Tom Cross for a while. He's a very conservative Republican whose brother, I think, is the Bishop of Springfield, was the Bishop of Springfield. Anyway, so we have prominent Democrats and Republicans on our board, which means my board literally mistrusts and dislikes each other. It's very true. It also frees up our organization to focus on data and best practices. So as opposed to Bruno's organization, which does very much take an ideological view of the world, we take a data-based, best practices, empirical view of the world. So if in a specific situation a more conservative, ideological sounding solution actually turns out to be the one supported by the data and best practices, that is the one my organization will champion. If in fact at some juncture there's one the more liberal camp would support, that is the one that my organization puts forward. And we've done a number of things. In fact, we did not support the governor's attempt to borrow more than what he needed to cover his past due debts. I can name a whole bunch of them. I have testified publicly against the public employee unions' benefits on their pension system, the same unions that fund me. Because if you write me a check, that doesn't give you the right to tell us what to conclude from a good government standpoint. We look at the data, we look at the best practices, and we make our recommendations. And if you don't like it, then stop funding us. But that's how we approach our work. So I think we need more people that approach work that way. I think people get too involved in their ideological or value-based, normative value-based view of the world without challenging those ideologies and those value bases with the actual data, how the real world has performed, and what the best practices are. And I honestly think that there are a lot of solutions to these quote-unquote intractable problems if you're willing to lay data sets over each other and map them out with best practices. So we are neither proponents of big government nor small government. Whatever level of government is the right to deliver the public good that is needed by society predicated on its demographics, that is what we should fund and deliver. And we should deliver it in the most effective and efficient manner possible.
Thank you to everyone that has answered the questions and talked. We're going to open this up to questions from you guys. I'm going to have to pass the microphone around so that they can.
I don't think it's working.
No, it's not this one. It's this one. Like that's why.
Oh,
It's the one for the cameras that
That's
matters.
what we're doing, it's,
Actually, don't worry about it.
are you good? Okay, well, never mind. So I will, you can direct your questions to the panel as a whole, and anybody can answer it, or if you have something for someone specific. Now, I'm going to put this out there because we do have conflicting views on the panel. I do not want to, I'm not going to give you time to argue with people. So if you have a question, we'll answer it, but not, you know, a back and forth debate. That's not what we're here for. We do these panels so that you do get a well-rounded view of the issues. That's important because as Bruno was saying, and as you know, I don't know what was saying, information. And that's what we're trying to do, is put that information out there. So just wanted to clear that up real quick. So your hand was up a long time ago.
Some time ago, the question was posed, what can be done? One of the things, and I think that I strongly subscribe to focusing on samenesses and put aside differences where that best practices works for you. And the question was, with the criminal justice system, what happens to those people when they come out? Unfortunately, because people do not know, the apportionments that are set by the census that have been established, those people that are incarcerated, and you said only 5% have life imprisonment or life sentences. So 95% of those people are going to come back, and I would say 80% of them will come back in less than the 10 years where the next census is going to be. The funds that are received for that imprisoned population stays in the area where they are domiciled. Are you getting that?
Yeah.
Meaning that the monies for those people that are incarcerated stay in those counties of incarceration rather than where they will be returning. So you have a disproportionate number of people that need the training, need the skills, their children need the education dollars. I mean, when you look at that whole strata of funding that comes as a result of someone being taken out of the home, irrespective of the social ramifications of a parent out of the home, just the dollars. And we need a referendum to force the state of Illinois to change that, where those dollars go where that person came from, rather than where they're domiciled at the time of incarceration.
I think the biggest hurdle to that is, once again, going back to the prison industrial complex. Then when you have to look at that money, that's money that actually goes to pay correctional officers in rural communities. No?
No. I'm talking about the money that is appropriated not for the actual place of incarceration.
Okay.
I'm talking about benefiting the county where they are.
Well, I mean, when I was answering the question, I meant that most of in those rural communities, these are individuals who live in the community and work at the prison. So, you know, most prisons are in rural areas. And like you said, the individuals returning from prison are going to urban communities for the most part.
Those counties don't fund the prison. The state funds the prisons, or the federal government funds the prisons. So what you're saying, that's a different pocket of money.
Right.
Did they not change that to 2000?
No, they did not.
I know there's been talk of doing it. I don't know why it changed.
Representative Sean Ford had proposed legislation to that effect, and it did not pass the House.
This is people in the South are not going to